Hello everyone, so welcome to my Last of Us 2 review. I've been waiting for this game for 7 years. I love and absolutely cherish the first game. Like I said, for 7 years I've been looking forward to this. So excited, so much anticipation, so much hype around this for me. It was my most anticipated game of 2020, and like I said, I was just looking forward to this so much. Being able to continue Ellie and Joel's journey, there was just so much that was built up for this game, so many questions that I had, so many things that I kind of anticipated going in, whether it be deaths, certain character moments, certain evolution, stuff like that. But does it live up to the hype? Does it live up to the standard that the first game set? So without further ado, let's get into reviewing The Last of Us Part 2. So the campaign took me about 23 hours to go through. If you watch my playthroughs, I was taking my time. I was looting and looking through every single nook and cranny, trying to find supplies for myself and just finding lore for the story, exploring the world that they've created. And how I'm going to do this review is I'm going to take little aspects such as graphics, gameplay, soundtrack, story, all of that. I'm going to rate them on their own and then kind of bring it together for a final score at the end of this review. So I'm going to start this off with the graphics, and I have to say right off the bat that there wasn't a single moment, a single frame, like every single time I looked around, panned the camera a little bit, there wasn't a single moment where I wasn't blown away by the details, the textures, the physics, just how amazing and beautiful that this game looked. All the lights, effects, and like little particle effects that they had when you're in a dark, desolate room and you're shining your flashlight and you can see all the dust particles that just look so real. Little water droplets coming down, grass moving, and shirts, like grass moving when you're walking in tall grass. You take cover up against the cabin with shirts in it and you see them move realistically. Just the darkness and everything really set the tone. The light set the tone. No matter what time of day this game took place, fire effects, such little things like that, all of it really set the tone for what the scene was doing. It all looked beautiful and it was so effective. So yeah, this game looks beautiful. 10 out of 10 right off the bat. Like, it was perfect. It was flawless in the graphical regards. So the next thing I'm going to score is the sound and performances. So just how the game sounds, all the mixing, editing, stuff like that, and the performances by the voice actors. So starting off with the sounds, every single footstep, bullet, raindrop, like gun sound, every single sound that the infected makes, brilliant, perfect, so effective in every single way. Like, it all added to the experience because of just how immersive all the sounds made the world feel, where you felt like you're actually there. Like in my headphones that I had, I could hear exactly where the footsteps were coming from when they were happening, even sometimes when it snuck up, like I knew what was happening or where it was coming from, and it scared me sometimes just because of how effective and how amazing it all sounded. And it's just, like I said too, where they were in the game was exactly where it was coming in my headphones, and I love that. Like, the tiniest little noises in the game kept me on the edge of my seat and just intense and gripping and on my toes the entire time, and that's what I love from sound mixing and all of these effects. It was executed absolutely perfectly. There wasn't a time where I found the sound cut out or didn't feel like it was in place at all. It was just, like I said, mixed and edited into the game flawlessly. That is why I'm going to give the sound of this game a 10 out of 10. Just absolutely brilliant once again. And now on to the voice acting. And I have to say right off the bat, I've never heard better voice acting ever in a video game. Again, in this regard, it's all flawless. Like, even down to the additional voices where you're creeping around and you hear conversations that just like scripted very, very well. They sounded so real, and just kind of how casual and tense, like no matter what the situation kind of called for, if they're just casually talking or they hear noise and they're communicating with each other, just voice acted absolutely so effectively and so well done. It just felt so real and, like I said, immersive into the world that they're building. The one thing too that just really got to me too was, like, when you killed these characters, the screams, the yelling, like their deaths were so brutal and sounded so real. There was times where I stabbed people in the neck, shot them, and like you could hear them choking on their own blood. It was brutal. Like, I blow someone's arms off and they're screaming for their lives. Like, it haunted me sometimes because, like, well, one, it made me feel terrible. It made me feel scared for them just because of how real it all sounded and how perfectly it was all executed. Like I said, when they're choking on their own blood, like, it sounded so real, like I actually physically killed someone. And of course, like, haunting, scary, but amazing in its execution. Another thing too that I really liked was the Seraphites, who are one of the factions in this game. They whistle to one another, and you can tell where they are at all points, and I just thought that was a really cool effect. I'll get into how that kind of, when I talk about the gameplay, I'm going to get into how that kind of affected all the gameplay, but like it was just brilliant, and I loved the addition of the Seraphites and how they use sound in their hunting and how you use their sounds for your own hunting. For the voice acting, I'm going to mainly touch on the big names in this game. So people like Jeffrey Wright, Troy Baker, Ashley Johnson, Jeffrey Price, Laura Bailey. Everyone nailed their roles. They all fully deliver their lines with so much emotion, rage, passion. The scene called for their characters. They voice acted absolutely perfectly, flawlessly. Like, you knew exactly what their characters were going through because of just the tiniest little change of tones in their voice, or little cracks in their voice, tears, even their silence was just absolutely perfect. Like I said, I've never heard better voice acting, even from the additional voices and the big names, ever before. That's why I'm going to give the voice acting again a 10 out of 10. Now for the soundtrack of this game. First game, he delivered a brilliant soundtrack, one of the most effective I've ever found, and he does the exact same thing here on par to the same level as you did in the first game. Like, the execution in every single scene built upon the scene, added more weight to it. When you couldn't quite tell character motivations, the soundtrack was telling you everything that you needed to know. Like, even the times where there was no music at all, Gustavo knew exactly when to play the music he needed to and what the scene called for in terms of the music. Like, even to when the soundtrack really kicks in, whether it be the war between the WLF and the Seraphites, just everything kicked in at the perfect time or faded out at the perfect time, didn't play at the perfect time. It's just, like I said, he captured every single scene perfectly. And again, 10 out of 10 for the soundtrack. Now onto the gameplay, and like I've been kind of illustrating, makes this game an absolute technical masterpiece. Like, it's gonna set the standard for how games are made, look, feel, sound, just everything for years to come. And I honestly want to say generations to come. Like, this really just sets a new standard. Like, I haven't had so much fun learning the ropes of a game and then executing it into the open world, into the combat, into crafting little items. Just, I haven't had so much fun doing that and exploring everything that the gameplay had to offer since Uncharted 4. Like, dude, I loved how the environments, everything's like way more overgrown. I loved how the environment played such a big role into the combat and the stealth mechanics of this game. Like how you have to hide in the tall grass and move around, you're using cover, like desolate buildings. Even too, when the lights come on, like when you're using your flashlight, you have to know when to use it, when enemies are going to see it. And I also felt too that like the AI in this game is so smart, and I never felt like there was a time where I was crawling through the tall grass using my flashlight and there was a point where like there was an enemy around. I never felt like it was cartoony in the sense that it was kind of like, how in the world did you see me, or how in the world do you not see me? Like, when enemies saw me, it was 100% justified, and when they didn't see me, yeah, there was no way you could see me. It just never felt cartoony, almost kind of like a Metal Gear Solid, where it's like, how do you not see or understand that, like, that I'm in a box? There was nothing like that. Like I said, the stealth mechanics just felt so organic and real. So part 2 of The Last of Us keeps the same upgrade and kind of looting material system as the first game did. So you're gonna have to scavenge in order to upgrade your character through finding pills, also to finding weapon upgrades, also to making certain you have enough materials to craft health kits, bombs, arrows, like different types of ammunition for your characters. So like, you gotta scavenge. There is, like I said, I was searching through every single nook and cranny, and there was quite a few times where like I searched everything, and because of how much the game threw at me, sometimes I still felt like I was still under-equipped to take on the situation because I was running out of resources faster than I could actually deal with the situations I was in. And of course too, like there's scenarios where like if you go into this building that's infested with clickers, there's gonna be a big reward for it. Like, the game rewards your exploration and your bravery in sometimes. So taking the risky path can be worth it. You got to be smart about it because you don't want to waste all of your resources just to get other ones. Like, you got to play it smart, but like the bigger risk you take, it rewards you for that. Same thing too, like your exploration, you find little notes that characters or just random people in the past have left around that really do add to the story and add to the worlds that they're trying to create. Just little apocalypse scenarios that are haunting, scary, brutal, like really compassionate and touching in sometimes. And I found it really fun to go and find these notes and just learn more about how the apocalypse affected different people in so many different ways. Like sometimes too, it's so cruel, and that's what the combat in this game is. It's cruel, gritty, dirty, and nasty. Like it just feels so raw and hateful in every single action that you put into it, because like at this point in the apocalypse, everyone alive are the hardcore survivalists, and there's like a lot of blind hate, but it all like it does add to the scenario, because of course too, like how can you trust the random stranger you see on the streets after all these years of just fighting and resource gathering? Like there's many ways to play this game, but the smartest way to do so I find is stealth, just because like resources are scarce and you got to make certain that you're using them effectively and you're not wasting them. The one thing too that I love about it is even if you do take the stealth approach, the game will, like no matter which faction you're taking on, the game will force you to have to switch up your playstyle and really be on your feet and on edge thinking the entire time. One of the ways it does this is through the addition of dogs in this game. They see your scent and they will track you and force you on the move. You can hide from them and take them out without like the dogs ever seeing you, but you got to keep constantly moving. And when there's dozens of enemies around, it makes it really tough, because sometimes you run out of grass, you have to run out into the open and risk being spotted by this person over there. Even if they only see you for a second, they act upon it. It's not like Metal Gear where all of a sudden like they get the little, or like Skyrim where it's, oh, must have been the wind. It's like, no, I definitely saw something and I'm gonna go investigate it, and I'm gonna tell these people that I saw something, so they're gonna come after you. And like I said, you gotta keep moving, or else like the game's gonna throw things at you that you're just gonna get swamped and overthrown. Like the game really wants you and forces you to take risks. One of the ways too, as I was speaking about earlier, is the Seraphites they whistle, and at first you're kind of like, oh, like they're whistling, okay, like this is so easy, I'm in the tall grass, I can't really see too much, but I can hear exactly where you are, I'm gonna take you out. But then you realize that the Seraphites are whistling in a sequence. So say there's 10 Seraphites in this field, they have a sequence where they'll whistle 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You take one of these people out who was the 6th Seraphite in the sequence, 5th whistles, no one hears the 6th. They're like, okay, well, the last time we heard him, he was here. Let's go investigate the area, and all of them will go to that area. So you can't stay in one place. You got to keep moving, and like I said, take risks. I just thought too that was a brilliant way to shake up the combats, and because you're constantly moving, you really got to be smart about every single move you make, and whether you should take this person out or just go by them. Is it really worth killing them, see if you can get resources when you're going to give away your position just because of the system that they put into place? One thing too that this game does with the WLF is they're like a really militant group, and they have a really powerful arsenal, and they love, like when you get into combat with them, they'll suppress your area with fire, and they'll send 2 people, like say you're behind a cement barricade, they'll send 2 people running on either side of you with melee weapons. So if you stand up and try and move, you're gonna get shot. If you stay there, you're gonna get rushed, and these people are gonna attack you with a machete. And like sometimes it's even too late to like try and fight them, because as soon as you stand up, these people are gonna try shooting at you. So sometimes you gotta suppress back at them, or like you shoot the kneecaps at people, you shoot the limbs at people, little things like that where you have to really think, because there's new types of infected too that kind of have to switch up how you play. So there's the clickers and the runners return, but they are faster and they're in way more, like there's way more in an area. So where the first game would maybe have like 3 or 4, this game will throw 10 at you. So again, you gotta really know when it's worth it to take out an enemy, or when it's worth it just to keep moving past them. There's a new group of enemies called Stalkers too, and these infected see you, they hear you, they do everything, and they'll actually hide from you and rush you. Like, they're terrifying at first, but I found the easiest way to take these guys out is make certain you have a bottle or a brick at you, throw them, go up, or throw it at them, and then go up and shiv them. And there is some insane, like, boss fights. There's one, you're playing as a character named Abby, and you fight a clicker an infected that's been around since the start of the outbreak, and this thing is just massive and terrifying. And same thing, you gotta keep moving, you gotta use all your resources, unfortunately, but yeah, that was just a tough fight, but really, really fun. And as I just mentioned, there are two different characters that you play as. There's Ellie and there's Abby. Ellie is really versatile and she's really swift, whereas Abby is an absolute tank with a crazy powerful arsenal at her disposal. The only, like, there's a lot of weapons in this game to choose from, and you gotta make certain you're using them in the right scenarios. The only weapon that I didn't enjoy at all in this game, or I just felt was useless, was the crossbow that you get when you play as Abby. I just found that the silenced pistol was way more effective. You found more ammo for it and it did way more damage, where there was times where I was hitting people, like one shot to the neck wasn't enough with the crossbow, whereas you do it with a silenced pistol, done deal, it was over with. And there was way more ammo for it too. I just felt that the crossbow was not nearly as effective and not fast enough as the pistol was, because I could get in 4 shots, maybe even more, before I could get 2 shots in with a crossbow. All the AI is so smart and they react. There's just like a lot of emphasis on the body damage. So if someone's running at you, shoot their kneecaps, they will fall and they will not be able to move. Like they're coming at you with a machete in one arm, shoot their arm, they're gonna drop the machete and they're almost defenseless. So you gotta be smart and tactical about how you're taking out these people depending on the scenario that they're putting you in. There's times too where like with the infected, you blow off their legs and they'll still crawl at you. And there's times too where I threw a grenade or a Molotov at someone and their legs were blown off and they were still like, in the 3 seconds of life that they had left, they were still trying to shoot at me. Or when they were on fire, they were still rushing at me, like trying to kill me. So what I had to do is whip out my shotgun really quick or take cover and just wait till they die. And I just thought that was really unique. I can't remember the last time I saw that in a video game executed to this level. So again, the gameplay is a 10 out of 10. It was so much fun to play until the story just takes away from it. And near the end of the game, I just felt like I had to rush through everything because I wanted to get through the story, because it wasn't enough to hold any of my interest. So The Last of Us 2 is a revenge story for Abby and for Ellie, but there's not really any real revenge. Like there is no points to like really any plot line or anything that got put into the game. It's just, it all felt weightless and heartless and just for nothing sometimes. And it was just like I questioned why these characters were doing these things, and in turn I questioned why I was playing this game. And that's all just because this game does absolutely nothing to push the characters forward and grow them. They're all just so ignorant and boring and tired. Like the first half of this game, well, even too, like most of this game is just events happening for no reason, just blind hates. Like I said, it makes sense for the blind hate and apocalypse scenario, but from a storytelling perspective, it's so bland and boring, and it just doesn't do anything for the characters. It was just things happening because they could happen. Act in an apocalypse scenario, but like from a storytelling perspective, especially from how amazing the first game did with building this world, it just didn't build upon anything. It just was a way to kill off people and show violence. Like everything just felt so empty. And I know like a lot of people are going to question when I say this, but I'm honestly okay with the way that Joel went out in this game. What he did to the Fireflies, of course he was going to have people who still believed in the cause come after him, and just the kind of the circumstances of his death, I understand happening. I think that it is a scenario that it was probably the most likely scenario for Joel to go out. The one thing that I didn't like about it is how they demonize him afterwards and just ruin, like they try and ruin his character, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But it's just the execution of his death after the fact was so poor and so disrespectful to what the first game set up. So like I say, you play halfway through the game, you play as Abby. She is the one who kills Joel, and she has a bunch of WLF, like basically her friends who help her carry out the deed, but she's the one who does it. And she does this because in the first game, when Joel saves Ellie from the Fireflies, the doctor who was about to operate on Ellie was Abby's father. So of course, after it happened, she comes in, she sees her dead dad, and she is livid. Like, she can't understand why they have a cure and all of a sudden now her father and so many of her friends are dead. It did an okay job setting up her vengeance and why she wanted revenge, but her character is so damn hypocritical, especially when it comes to her relationship with the Seraphites, because Joel and Tommy, without batting an eye, saved her life when she was near Jackson. Like, they basically took her in as one of her own, no questions asked, helped save her life, and in turn she brings them to her friends, murders them in cold blood. But when the Seraphites do it to them, just because they're kids, like, I couldn't quite tell what her motivation was. Like, there was hints that it was just to impress one of her friends, Owen, who she had romantic feelings for, but it just felt so hypocritical that it's kind of like, okay, Joel saves you, I get it, like, he murdered your father, like, he killed a bunch of your friends, but so did the Seraphites. It was just all of a sudden, now out of nowhere, she was okay with it. Like, I feel like Ellie, of course, like, the weight of losing your father is more than sometimes losing your friends, but I can't imagine how many of her friends and people that she knew she lost to the Seraphites. It just didn't really make sense to me. The one thing too about Joel's death that I kind of thought about afterwards is how him and Tommy seemed a little out of character and how they weren't as smart as they set them up in the first game right before Joel's death. It was just, I understand that they were put in a really tough scenario because of the hordes of infected that were coming after them. It's just, they didn't question at all what was going on or why they were led where they were. It's just, they seemed way too kind and way too trusting of strangers when in the first game they were so smart about people and just how evil the apocalypse can make people and how selfish the apocalypse can make people. There was just no question at all in that scene. Pretty much half of the game you play as her, and it tries to justify what she did to Joel, but she killed Joel in such a cowardly way, and everything she was doing for the Seraphite children was so selfish. It was to gain the affection of Owen and just basically make her think, oh, I'm doing something right. But it was for all the wrong reasons, and it just didn't, like, it doesn't justify her at all, even though it seemed like the game was like, okay, this clears her name. Joel is vilified because of what he did to her father, when, like, they just didn't really get into the circumstances of why Joel needed to do what he did, how there's no really right or wrong depending on how you look at it from each character's eyes. Everything she did was just for her own survival, where the WLF turned on her for doing what she did, and that doesn't mean, it's just because, like I said, there's so much blind hate, and it wasn't because she wanted to help these kids or see them through. It was just she needed them, and everything was so selfish. Of course, too, is like Joel is one of the most iconic characters on PlayStation, and seeing someone murder like one of your favorite characters in such a cowardly, brutal, selfish way, and then having to play as them and have the game throw just a super linear storyline to try and make you like care for her and justify her was like really insulting. Like I said, they just try and vilify everything that Joel did through the eyes of Abby and even through Ellie, which I thought was so disrespectful to who Joel was. And just too, who, like, the relationship between Ellie and Joel was just tossed out the window, and I thought there was just so much disrespect to the writing and the relationship that they had in the first game. It felt so out of place and like a slap in the face to their relationship in the past and just how characters connected to the both of them. I also have to say too that like playing as Abby was almost like the best way I can describe it is having to play as Locke in Halo 5 in Guardians. But Locke was actually likable, Abby not at all, because she's a piece of shit. Same thing too with all the WLF. They try and justify all of them, but they're all absolutely terrible people. The only one I could kind of get on board with was Mel, where she was a doctor. She was to help people. The WLF at the time and where they were had the most resources to do so. She hated what they stood for because the WLF is a group of genocidal terrorists. Every now and then Owen seemed like he was gonna make me like him in certain ways, but again, he was just selfish. He used people. And there were so many times too with him and Mel where it was like, you obviously don't agree with what's going on. Why haven't you left years ago? It just didn't make sense to me at all. Like, their characters just kept bouncing from you're a dick to, oh, maybe there's a little bit of light in you, but nope, you did this, so that's all wiped away. And they just kept rinsing and repeating that to the point where it wasn't effective at first, and it was just kind of like, why am I even trying to care for you? The only storyline that I liked in this game was that of Yara and Lev. They're two sisters, or brother and sister, depending on like the way you want to classify it, but I see them as brother and sister, who were Seraphites, but they question the religion and all the traditions of the Seraphites, and they have to go on the run because they're vilified by their own tribe. And there was just, in all the blind hate, there was just so much focus on morals, love, identity within these characters, and I thought they did a really good job handling them. I wish we would have seen more of them, because they had the best plot line in the game. It was the only one that I actually had interest in. But like I said, I feel like we didn't need to play as Abby through half of the game. Most of it just felt, like I said, none of it justified her character for me. And I think all we really needed to see was that scene where you find out the identity of her father and her realizing what happens. Like, none of her missions actually added to the game and to her character. The only reasons that I was able to get through her mission was because I wanted to see what was going to happen with Yara and Lev. I wanted to learn more about them, and when we did, I fell in love with these two kids. I thought they were amazingly added in. They're easily, like, you take all the characters in The Last of Us, and I have to say, after this game, they're the only characters that I like. Same thing with Dina. She's one of the only characters that I actually like, because this game just ruined so many characters for me. Like, Joel's still good in my books, but Ellie, I don't like her anymore. Ellie in this game was so ignorant and mean and selfish and like not questioning anything that she was doing. She was just always right in her mind, which was a really weird turn for me, because she had morality in the first game. It's just she finds out about the circumstances, or basically she finds out what happened in the hospital. She confronts Joel about it, and ever since they had that conversation, it's like she can't even look at Joel. She can't trust him. She can't do anything for him anymore. And I just thought that was so selfish. And I'm like looking at her and thinking about her character in the first game, and she knows so much better that the Fireflies were going to kill her without even consenting Joel or Ellie. They were just, this is your fate, it's done. The cure might not have worked. Like, the vaccine might not have worked. There was no guarantee that it was going to save people at all. And I understand thinking, like, I have immunity, maybe I can help people, but there was no guarantee for it, and you didn't have any choice in it. Joel gave her a life and a choice, and Ellie just basically only saw that her purpose to save people was taken away and that she would never know. It was just basically a way to vilify Joel and make it seem like he took her purpose away from her, but Ellie did that on her own. She didn't do anything with her life, especially here. Like, when she goes on her revenge mission, she wastes everything on her own, but it still brings it back to, no, it was Joel who did this. Abby beats the shit out of Ellie at one point in the game, and you think, okay, they're all gonna move on with their lives, which they try to do, but then Tommy gets a hint that, or basically gets a tip that he knows where Abby went. Just, Ellie leaves and absolutely destroys Dina for nothing, because she doesn't carry out with it. She has Abby underwater, choking, about to die. She's about to basically clean the slate and get revenge for what Abby so cowardly did to Joel, but she doesn't go through with it. She destroyed Dina for nothing. Same thing too, Jesse risked everything to help her in Seattle. He lost his life because of it, so now Jesse's life is meaningless. His sacrifice means absolutely nothing. Joel remains vilified. He doesn't get avenged in any way. His death is meaningless. And same thing too, Tommy in this game is just painted out to be a deadbeat. They ruined his character, where he was understanding, he was smart, he was really rational, and he grounded a lot of people. But in this game, he just makes really rash choices that destroys his life in Jackson. He destroys his life with Maria, his wife. And he's constantly telling people that this is what you need to do, because like, I can't do it anymore. He's sending people to ruin their lives just like Ellie did with Dina and with Jesse. Like I said too, Jesse had the potential to be a really great character. And I get, like, it's the apocalypse, not everyone's gonna get the ending they deserve because there's so much blind hate. But I don't get why they went with this revenge story when, like I said, none of it had any weight or added anything to the characters. None of the characters really got what they deserved. Every one of them just got an empty death. Like, all the blind hate in this game just takes away all compassion, care, or weight to the characters, and it just made it so boring and frustrating to get through because none of it meant anything. It just meant death and emptiness, and I find that there's so much more to take away and so many more lessons that this game really could have taught people. It's just too, like, playing as Abby, where she has the biggest story missions, like her storyline brought Lev and Yara to the forefront, and it was the only part of the game that I liked. And just not having that come from Ellie when this game was marketed to be Ellie's journey, but really no, it was setting up and building towards Abby being the one in the right. This was her journey and her story. I hated it because she's an absolute coward and piece of shit. Like, Ellie wasn't able to shine due to her screen time in the game and also her writing. This was all focused on giving Abby a journey to justify why Joel made the wrong choice, even though he didn't at all in my eyes. He was 100% justified in doing what he did. But the writers in this game thought otherwise, and they executed upon that so poorly. There's ways that they could have gone around it, and really, it's just like I said, if all Abby's gameplay was her seeing her dad die, it would have been 100% more effective for me. But no, they dragged it out and just gave you really bland, empty story missions to do it, where the only thing I could care about was Yara and Lev. Same thing too, them trying to justify Owen. Like I said, he could have left it so many times, and then, like, there's the most awkward and ridiculous sex scene in this game between Abby and Owen. I was more comfortable watching the kiss scene between Rey and Kylo in episode 9 of Star Wars. Like, it made me feel so uncomfortable. I didn't even know how to react or what to say when I was watching it in my stream. It was just really weird, man. But yeah, like, The Last of Us 2 is a technical masterpiece, gameplay-wise, so much fun to play, but all the life is sucked out due to the just terrible storyline that doesn't really explain the factions, the religion all too well. There's some of it in the notes, but there's just not enough there to make you care about these characters, and they just ruin the legacy of so many of these characters that were staples to the PlayStation and Sony brands from the first game. Like, there's things that I could go back and do, and, like, I could replay this game, but because of the story, there's no reward for me. Like in the first game, where there was so many amazing character moments that made me want to relive them so many times, but I don't have that with anything in this game taken, like, into the context of the whole picture after beating it. There's nothing drawing me back into playing this game, and thus there's no replayability, where I'm just going to uninstall the game in the next couple of days here because I don't want to return to it. There's nothing that's going to draw me back into it. So, like, even though there's so many 10 out of 10 aspects and technical masterpieces and amazing achievements in this game, the story sucks the life and all the enjoyment out of it. And that's why, taken together as a grand total, I'm giving The Last of Us a 5 out of 10. So in the comments, let me guys know what you thought of The Last of Us Part 2, what you would score it, what your most favorite thing about the game was, and what your least favorite thing about it is. And do you want a sequel after this? My answer to that is no. I just don't see any way to redeem Ellie or any of the characters in the legacies that were built upon after what this game did to them. But yeah, just let me know what you guys thought in the comments. And as always, you can check out all of my other video game reviews from my playlist down below. You can watch my whole Last of Us Part 2 playthrough. But as always, like this video, again, comment, subscribe. You can check out all of my other videos to my playlist below. But awesome, guys. Next game I'm going to be playing through for you that I can think of, or the next new release, is going to be Ghost of Tsushima, which comes out July 17th. I am so excited for that game, and yeah, I can't wait to play that game for you guys. So see you then.